There was a moment that happened after I left my job in 2016. At that time, I was a recruiter, and this is kind of where my whole epiphany happened when I knew I wanted more out of my life, but also I just didn't want to be stuck in the office. I think I was at a dinner party, I don't know, some type of gathering, and essentially one of those casual Saturday evenings that everyone you don't know in the room, and the conversation is easy and light, and then someone turns to you and asks the most normal question in the world, which is sometimes not my favorite question. And the question was, "So, what do you do?" And I remember I fumbled my words, and I think I did it a little bit too much to the point where it was just kind of shady of the type of work that I did. And truth be told, it wasn't because I was shy. It wasn't because I didn't have an answer, but because the answer I had been given for some time was the one that came out automatically, confidently, without a second of hesitation. That answer didn't exist anymore. I had been a recruiter. I had been a title in a company. I was just very clean in my one-line explanation of who I was in a professional context. And I had walked away from it on purpose, by choice, because something in me knew it was time. And I'm going to really draw the image and the picture of that moment. I'll never forget it. I was going back and forth in my mind sitting there at the desk, and I think it was like a Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday morning in the summer of, I don't even remember what year that was. I think 2016 or something. And I was just going back and forth, and I remember talking with one of my colleagues that I'm still close to till this day, and I just thought, this isn't it. I was scrolling through emails. I had a load of paperwork on my desk at that time, and I remember just dialing up my leader, my boss, and said, "I think I'm done." And I remember she really acknowledged my bravery and just being encouraged, or seeing me, knowing that I had the courage to move and go into a different direction. And I remember, I think later that day, she called me back and said that I had to leave that day. And it was such a shock, right? You're gathering all your things in your boxes, you're saying goodbye to colleagues, you're letting them know that you left. And mind you, we had a really small office at that time. And so it all happened so abruptly, so quick. At the same time, it was something that was sneaking up on me over the course of the months. So going back to this story and standing in that living room talking with individuals that I most likely don't talk till this day, and people are looking at me for an answer, I realized something that generally shocked me. And I had no idea who I was without it at that time. It's like, how do you talk about yourself, talk about what you do, who you are, when you don't have a title and when you don't have a job? And in fact, when you're kind of in the in between. Not because I was nobody, right? But because somewhere along the way, without noticing, without choosing it, I had let my job title become my entire answer to the question of who I am. And when the title was gone, the answer was gone with it. And that moment, that stumbling, slightly embarrassed, deeply disoriented moment turned out to be one of the most important parts of my life, and in addition to many different parts of my life in different moments. I want to share about something that I think happens to a lot of women, especially high achieving women who are good at their jobs. They're the A student, or maybe they're just really particular and meticulous about what they do. Women who have worked hard to build something in their careers. We let the title do too much work, not on purpose. Nobody sits down one day and decides, I'm going to make my entire identity about my job. It happens slowly. It happens because we spend more waking hours at work than anywhere else. It happens because our culture asks, what do you do? Before to ask, who are you? It happens because being good at something feels like being something, and after enough years, those two things start to blur. Think about how you introduce yourself, not to close friends, but to new people. To someone at a networking event or a wedding or a dinner party, how quickly does your job title come out? How much of your introduction is actually just your resume? And now think about this. If you took that title away, your certifications, your degrees, your endless amount of schooling that you've done, if you took the company name away, the industry, the salary, the LinkedIn profile, the business cards, who would you say you were then? I'm not asking that to be harsh. I'm asking because I think for so many of us, that question feels genuinely hard to answer. And the fact that it feels hard, that is the thing worth paying attention to. Because here's what I know now that I didn't know back in 2016. A job title is something you hold. It is not something you are. And when we confuse those two things, when we let what we hold become who we are, we give our employers an enormous amount of power over something that should never have been theirs to touch. Our sense of self. The identity crisis that comes from leaving a job, or even from just imagining leaving one, is not a sign that you're weak or lost or that you made the wrong decision. It's a sign that you've been outsourcing your identity to an institution. And the good news, the really good news, is that you can take it back. If someone asks you who you are, with no job title, no role, no resume, what would you say? And how does it feel to sit in that question? Let's go back to 2016, to the weeks right after I left. Because here's what nobody tells you about leaving a job that wasn't right for you. It doesn't just feel like relief. It feels like a burden, something coming off your shoulders that you can finally breathe and be at peace. It feels like relief and terror at the exact same time. And those two feelings sitting together in your chest, that combination is one of the strangest and most disorienting things I have ever experienced. The relief was real, don't get me wrong. I want to start there because I think women sometimes feel guilty about the relief, like they shouldn't feel it. Like it means they didn't try hard enough or didn't appreciate what they had. But the relief was immediate and physical and undeniable. Like putting down something heavy that I had been carrying for so long, as I mentioned, and I had stopped noticing the weight. The morning after I left, I woke up and the alarm didn't go off. And I just lay there. And something in my body exhaled in a way it hadn't exhaled in years. And then about 45 minutes later, the terror showed up. Because the relief had been about the job, but the terror was about something much bigger than the job. The terror was about identity, about the blankness I mentioned at that dinner party, about the sudden vertiginous feeling of standing in my own life with no title, no structure, no external thing telling me what I was worth or what I was supposed to be or what I was supposed to be doing with my days. And underneath the terror, underneath all of it, was a question I had been avoiding for a very long time. Who am I actually? Not as an employee, not as a recruiter, not as a woman who hits the target and manages a pipeline and shows up and performs. Who am I when none of that is required of me? And I want to share with you something about that question. It is terrifying to sit with. And it is the most important question you will ever ask yourself. Again, I was 25 at that time. And I think a lot of times what happens is that we just roll into our career without really being inquisitive about who we actually are outside of our career and what we do. Because on the other side of it, right, on the other side of this discomfort and the blankness and the not knowing is the most honest version of you that has ever existed. And she has been waiting a very long time for you to come looking. And that is the dream of moving abroad. of leaving for France, for Europe, for somewhere new. It started getting louder for me right around this time. And I do remember too, at that time I really wanted to move actually to South Korea. This was, like I said, back in 2016. So because when the title was gone and the structure was gone and I was left alone with just myself, I started hearing things I hadn't been able to hear before because I was so consumed in the work that I was just doing and distracted by something that wasn't even meant for me in the first place. But yeah, I still had to do it because that in itself is a lesson in itself. And when I say started to hear things I hadn't been able to hear before is what I actually wanted, what I desired, what I deeply desired for myself in my life. What I was actually curious about, what kind of mornings I wanted to have, what kind of life I wanted to be living. And the life I kept coming back to over and over and over in every quiet moment looked nothing like the one I had just left. Underneath the job, the role, the responsibilities, what has always been true about you? What lights you up that has nothing to do with your career? And when did you last give that thing your full attention? I want to offer you a distinction that changed everything for me. There are things about you that your job revealed, and there are things about you that your job created. The things it revealed, your work ethic, your ability to lead, your problem solving, your resilience, your capacity to show up even when it's hard, those things are yours. They were always yours. The job just gave them a stage. When the stage is gone, those things don't go with it. They come with you everywhere you go for the rest of your life. But the things that job created, the performance, the persona, the carefully managed version of yourself that knew exactly how to be in the environment, how to navigate that culture, how to be palatable, I think I'm saying that right, and professional and appropriately ambitious. Those things were costumes, and you were allowed to take them off. In fact, taking them off might be the most radical thing you can ever do, because underneath the costume is the woman who existed before the job told her who to be. The curious one, the brave one, the one who had dreams that had nothing to do with a salary band or performance review. The one who looked up at the planes crossing the Minneapolis sky and felt something she couldn't name but couldn't ignore. That woman didn't disappear when you got the job. She got very, very quiet. And I want to say something to the woman listening who is terrified that leaving her job means losing herself. You are not going to lose yourself. In fact, you're going to find yourself. The self that was there before the title, the self that will be there long after it. The job was never your identity. It was just the loudest thing in the room. That's what you focus on. That's what you had to pay attention to. And when it gets quiet, you'll finally be able to hear yourself again. My reflection question for you is, what parts of yourself did you quietly set aside to fit into your current job or life? And what would it feel like to pick those parts back up? Here's what I want you to take with you today. The question, who are you without your job title, is not a crisis. It's an invitation. It is your life asking you to get more specific, to stop hiding behind what you do and start showing up as who you are. To trade the shortcut of a title for that much richer, much more complicated, much more interesting answer that lives with underneath it. And that answer, your real answer, is the foundation of everything you're going to build next. Whether that's a life abroad, a new career, a new relationship with yourself, or simply a Tuesday morning that feels like yours. You were someone before that job. You were someone before that career. You are someone inside that job right now, even if she barely gets any airtime. And you will be someone magnificent on the other side of it. The woman at that dinner party who couldn't answer that question, she wasn't lost. She was just at the beginning, standing at the exact moment where the old answer had run out and the real one hadn't arrived yet. Ooh, I love that sentence. That in between place is uncomfortable, but is also where everything changes. So the next time someone asks you what you do, and you feel that flicker of something underneath the automatic answer, don't push it down. Get curious about it, because that flicker, that is the most honest thing about you right now. And she deserves to be heard. This was episode 5. Thank you for driving with me today. I'll see you on the next commute.